All right, brothers and sisters. So in the news, we've been hearing a lot of people giving reports on the situation that we're all aware of in Niger, where there was a coup that took place by the military that removed President Bazoum from power, and he's currently still being detained along with his family. People from around the world have weighed in on this. We know that France is highly upset due to the fact that they have a lot of interest on the continent, specifically in Niger, and the United States also has special interest in Niger. And we saw how ECOWAS responded. Nigeria, the president of Nigeria, wanted to invade Niger and working at the service of France and the United States, Ghana and Nigeria, two countries that historically, had some of the biggest ports for slavery in the the transatlantic slave trade or the Maafa. So historically, these two countries have always aided Europeans, if you want to say, in the destruction of their own people. And we see here that these two leaders of Ghana and Nigeria leading the charge once again in the situation. But when we look to East Africa, we've been very uh, high on President William Ruto and some of the things that he has done coming into office. But he gave a speech recently at an African Union meeting where he talked about his position on countries that on the continent of Africa, countries on the continent of Africa that uh, commit or have coups within the country. He talked about how he felt those countries should be expelled from the African Union. And he also gave a speech initially when the coup happened, voicing his support for President Bazoum and President ECOWAS. So let's listen in to what he had to say initially, and we'll give our back commentary on our thoughts on it.
Kenyan President William Ruto on Friday condemned the coup in Niger, calling the army takeover of the unstable country a serious setback for Africa. Speaking in Mombasa, Kenya, President William Ruto called on the Niger military guards to release the detained leader Mohamed Bazoum. Bazoum has been confined to his residence since Wednesday by his own presidential guards.
The Republic of Kenya joins the rest of the world to condemn in the strongest terms this unconstitutional act that subverts democracy through a coup d'etat and calls for the immediate release of President Mohamed Bazoum, who is reportedly seized by members of the Presidential Guard.
Several world leaders, including the French President Emmanuel Macron, have condemned the recent coup and further warned of the serious security risk from the mainly jihadist groups that have been a menace in the region.
Now, he said, the rest of the world, no, the rest of the world does not condemn Niger for what they're doing. It's specifically certain countries, most of them in the West, and a lot of them in ECOWAS, that are condemning Niger. As a matter of fact, the leader of Wagner Group said that he felt that the coup d'etat was justified due to the exploitation of France and other countries on the people who live in Niger. They have the right to fight and combat against corruption and exploitation. But William Ruto went on to say in a speech that as the African Union, we are against the undemocratic removal of any government. Coups are not a solution to the challenges we have as a continent. We are taking a very firm position and advise that any undemocratic removal of any government immediately earns the expulsion from the African Union, said Ruto. Now, is he saying this because he truly believes that what's happening in Niger is undemocratic? Or is he saying this because he fears that this could happen to him in Kenya? And he wants to put forth an effort to prevent other coups from taking place where citizens of countries feel there's corruption taking place. It's interesting that a leader that knows the African continent as well as William Ruto does is willing to stand up against what he calls an undemocratic removal of a government, and in the same breath not be willing to say that African countries who participate in corruption and exploitation of their citizens should be expelled from the African Union. So I took it upon, myself to make adjustments to what his speech should have said. And I felt as though it should have said, as an African Union, we are against corruption from any government. Corrupt leaders are not a solution to the challenges we have faced from Western countries as a continent. We are taking a very firm position and advise that any discovery of a corrupt leader aiding and abetting foreign governments and interests against their own citizens will immediately earn the expulsion from the African Union. This would be a more appropriate step, being that he knows how France has been exploiting and stealing from the people of Niger, but yet in his speech, he chooses to talk about Bazoum being free. What about the people of Niger being free? What's going to happen if they continue to be detained by the exploitation of France? And lately, President Ruto has been really focusing on doing things that are against what we would look to a leader, an African-centered leader who knows the history of the Western world to do. If we go back to February, it's not a coincidence that Kenya received more than $126 million in food assistance in U.S. aid back in February of 2023. Now, when you receive money from countries like the United States doesn't just give out money just because it has a good heart and wants to help people around the world. It's an investment. And it's an investment on behalf of the United States interests. So when they give a country aid, they're looking to get something in return. So is it a coincidence that Kenya receives this aid under the regime of William Ruto in February? And here you have it in July, where Anthony Blinken, again, this is public information, easy to look up, places a call to the Kenyan President Ruto on July 29, 2023. Here it says that Secretary of State Anthony Blinken spoke with Kenyan President William Ruto today to express our appreciation for Kenya's contributions to regional peace and stability, including his leadership in addressing the crisis in Sudan and advancing East African community-led talks to ease tensions in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Secretary also encouraged peaceful and constructive dialogue to resolve political differences in Kenya. Additionally, the Secretary and President Ruto discussed Kenya's positive consideration of leading a multinational force in Haiti. Now, this was posted on July 29th. Hours later, the mainstream media comes out with reports. Kenya ready to lead multinational force to Haiti. So was this a call to discuss what happened in the Congo and Sudan, or was this a call to say, hey, you remember that 126 million that we gave you back in February? Well, now we need you to send some troops over to Haiti. Because if anybody knows anything about the Monroe Doctrine, there's no way in hell the United States would allow any military to operate in the Western Hemisphere without its approval. Now, the interesting thing here is that it says Kenya is ready to lead a multinational force into Haiti. And down here it says at the request of Friends of Haiti groups of nations, Kenya has accepted to positively consider leading a multinational force to Haiti. So now this group, Friends of Haiti group of nations, is being used as a front to be the group that requested Kenya to come in to Haiti. We know that it was Blinken and the United States government that put in a request for Kenya to come into Haiti. And when I tried to research this group, Friends of Haiti Groups of Nations, the only thing that I could find was this nonprofit in the United States that's ran by white Christians. You can go look at the board of directors and look these people up. So you're trying to tell me that these people put in a request from the United States in Michigan to President Ruto in Kenya, and they said, okay, we'll go in and send 1,000 troops because of this request. That doesn't make any sense. Wow. Now, you know, people want to believe that there's a lot of gang violence going on in Haiti and that the violence has gotten so bad that there needs to be some type of external help to come in and resolve the issue. But when I looked at what Sister Zili Danto put out and a lot of her work about the situation that's going on, here's a tweet that she tweeted not too long ago, back, I believe, on August 3rd, where she directly tagged William Ruto, the official Kenyan Twitter page, in the State House of Kenya. And she says here, before Rwanda and Kenya get involved in this Haiti recolonizing, they should do the homework to understand what is truly happening. In 2004, the violence rate in Haiti was below 5.2% when per 100,000. When the UN left, it's over 10%. And she also put a chart to show how it increased or decreased over the years. But she also went on to say, you know, the parliamentary groups that the UN or US calls gangs, so they're saying all this gang activities happen. And she says that in Haiti are the white colonizers, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Mujahideen, puppets, and the Syrian Lebanese overseer oligarchs furnish weapons to these Haiti death squads and train police and give them their marching orders. So this is the same type of play that we've seen historically happen, where the United States will send in terrorists to a country or send in people or send weapons and resources in for people within a country to try to destabilize the region, giving them a reason to then invade, have military presence in that country, and prop up a government that they can then use to extract the resources out of that country. So we see here Kenya being used as a country to send its troops in that the United States can then use to, as she says, recolonize Haiti and be able to control that region, a region that they haven't been able to successfully control in the last 200 years. So
yeah, I think it's some of the recent decisions, definitely by Dr. Ruto, have raised a lot of eyebrows. Let's put it like that. And this is certainly one of those issues. This, you know,
it reminded me of, you know, it reminded me of when the British, who always had the King's African Rifles, go into Kenya to, in their eyes, stop the terrorist group, the Mau Mau. You know, they're sending in black people, African people, to do a job that they can't do. And they've never been able to successfully beat black people without black people assisting them in doing so. So Haiti is a place where Africans successfully defeated many European invasions. And now here we see we're having a country like Kenya send troops from the other side of the world over into the Western Hemisphere with the approval of the United States. Because as I stated, you look at the Monroe Doctrine, they're not going to allow a military of any sort to be able to operate over here on behalf of another country. That's not how they operate. So I think this is just clear to see that this is a paid favor. And at the same time, when I hear William Ruto talk about, the coup in Niger as if it is a negative thing, when he knows that Bazoum is bending over for the French, when he knows that Bazoum is allowing the French military to come in and he's singing the same song that we need the French for protection from terrorism that he knows the United States and France is responsible for in the region, the jihadists that they're funding to go in and try to destabilize these countries, when he knows this as a leader and he doesn't say it and he speaks against it, it's unacceptable. And this is what we have to call out, because African people are at a point now where the youth are stepping up and they're saying, we're not taking this over the next 50 years, which is why you get what you got in Niger, where you see Africans out in the streets holding up Russian flags. Yeah, we would like for them to be holding up, red, black, and green flags like you stated, but the reason why they hold up the Russian flag is because they are totally against the French. And they look at the Russians as an ally that can help them liberate themselves from the French and from the United States. William Ruto is aware of this. So at the same breath, if he is truly against coups taking place, he should also be saying, we don't want coups to happen, but we also don't want corruption to happen.
Yeah, most definitely. I think part of the problem with a lot of African leaders is that, and I think Dr. Clark, has articulated this, we are using European standards. We're using the standards of others to judge the way we govern ourselves. And, they say that Ruto is saying, well, anyone who has been elected, quote unquote, democratically cannot be, removed from office, via, any kind of action that is not related to an election, which is absurd, which is absolutely ridiculous, because, as Brother Amo said, how many of these African leaders in numerous countries are in fact, in power because the elections are rigged. What happens? Mm-hmm. What happens in Rwanda when Paul Kagame gets 90% or 98% or 99% of the vote, and he has arrested African women who chose to run against him in the election?
Mm-hmm.
People don't even get to vote for another candidate. So this whole idea about the United States democracy and democracies in Western Europe and as being some kind of standard, none of those systems are based on ethics.
Mm-hmm.
They are all based on power. All of them are based on power alone. As Dr. Marimani says, hypocrisy is a way of life. When they talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and those that kind of propaganda. So I think this is where Dr. Ruto and a lot of these African leaders have gone off the rails, because they are using European standards rather than using the African standards of Ma'at as the true judge of how countries should be run in the best interest of the masses, of our people. I mean, the entire African Union should be embarrassed to see a country like the Democratic Republic of the Congo out children caked in dirt and mud and breathing, toxic air, mining cobalt that will be refined and shipped out of the country and used in lithium batteries to power electric vehicles.
And they're ready to expel. They're ready to expel Niger for this coup. But yet you work with a country that did what you said shouldn't be done. They undemocratically overthrew a democratically elected leader in Libya. But yeah, you turn around and bend over and take money from them.
And where were the African leaders saying that Libya should be expelled from the African Union? As a matter of fact, I believe every country on the continent, with the exception of Zimbabwe, eventually recognized the criminal government, the government that had been put in place by the United States and the NATO powers, as the legitimate government of Libya in 2011, after Muammar Gaddafi was assassinated and overthrown. Where are these leaders complaining about that? They were nowhere to be found. They were quiet as church mice, or as my dad used to say, quiet as a rat peeing on cotton. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to talk about, these systems, then the systems have to be based on truth, justice, righteousness, and ethics. I mean, look at these African leaders like Paul Biya of Cameroon, and the leaders of Equatorial Guinea. How long have these people been in power? Mm-hmm. Look at their standard of living compared to the masses of people in Equatorial Guinea, in Cameroon.
Right there in Uganda, a lot of people in Uganda thought that Bobby Wine won the last election against Museveni. But they said they felt that the election was rigged.
In the late 80s, Museveni overthrew the government, Milton Obote, the government of Uganda, and Paul Kagame was part of his army that carried out, that removal from power of a person who had been, quote unquote, democratically elected.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, what happened in Rwanda, the ethnocide of, by some estimates, 800,000 Africans.
Right.
500,000 on the low number. Go ahead, brother.
The United States celebrated when there was a coup in the Congo and Patrice Lumumba got killed.
Oh, absolutely. Not only celebrated, they were part and parcel of the plot.
Mm-hmm.
To install Mobutu, right? They were part and parcel of the plot that led to the overthrow and assassination, Patrice Lumumba, in the Katanga province, the breakaway Katanga province, being run by the person that the Honorable Omowale Malcolm X called one of the worst Africans in the history of African people, Moise Shombe. So yeah, these guys need to, you know, we need leaders who are driven by ethics and by the determination to make sure that people of African descent are living free, proud, productive, and prosperous lives. And you know, it's not based on these European political or economic systems.
Right. I saw a video where Sam George from Ghana talked about how he felt like the democracy needed to be demolished in Africa because it doesn't work for African people, that we need to establish our own systems of how we, you know, govern ourselves and govern our people.
Yeah.
And much of this democracy, all it's built around is the West having a leader in place that they can control as a puppet for the best interests. That's all democracy really means.
Well, because like as you said, it's not that they are opposed to coups. It's not that they were opposed to the overthrow of Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana and, you know, Modibo Keita in Mali, the numerous attempts to assassinate and overthrow Ahmed Sékou Touré in Guinea. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The overthrow of Ezekwe, you know, a friend of Dr. Clark in Nigeria. It's not that they are opposed to coups, as long as the person who is being overthrown is being replaced by someone that they can manipulate and control so that they can continue to exploit the vast riches of the African continent. So they've engaged in coups all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have a problem overthrowing Allende in Chile, numerous attempts to overthrow Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. You know, they don't have Juan Bosch in the Dominican Republic, right? So what's this? Oh, these coups. No, it's not that. It's about who controls the resources that are going to continue to allow the exploitation of African people. Look at these children working in these, mining this cobalt. Look at it. I'm telling you, the African Union should absolutely be thoroughly embarrassed. But no,
And
go ahead.
And when you look at, you know, the amount of gold that's extracted out of these countries, it makes sense to me why Russia would be in the region trying to help these countries liberate themselves. Because if you're talking about BRICS creating a new currency that's going to be backed by gold, what's the first thing you want to do? You want to take away the control that Western countries have over their access and resource to the gold and get it back in your favor. That's why I believe Russia is there, because they know that helping Africa be liberated benefits them and weakens their enemies.
Well, and one of the driving factors is because, like in Burkina Faso, right, which gold is one of their leading exports. The number one mine that they are extracting gold from is inoperative because the area is controlled by these Islamic jihadists, members, I think, of the Islamic State West Africa province. So the country can't even mine its number one resource and, you know, ship it to market to be sold so that the country can build the infrastructure and the educational system and benefit the mass of its people, because these jihadists who were brought into Africa by the North Atlantic powers in 2011. They were brought in to be the army fighting against the government of Muammar Gaddafi. And then after Gaddafi was overthrown, they began to spread across the rest of the Sahel, first into Mali, and then from there, going all the way across to Niger and Chad. Okay, so you want to know why these young leaders have overthrown these corrupt rulers or presidents of their countries. This is the reason why. This is the reason why. Because these corrupt leaders are allowing, they can't protect their own citizens. I mean, here's President of Nigeria and Tinubu talking about sending troops to Niger, and he can't even protect his own citizens in Nigeria. This is absurd.
You know, they definitely need to be continuously exposed. And I think, you know, the youth movement, as we always talk about, the youth movement in Africa is really going to be the key. Because if all these countries decide to invade, the one thing that can be steadfast is the citizens rising up and fighting for their country. That's ultimately how they can win. And wherever you have leadership that is promoting the continued colonization of a country, they should be looked upon as detractors of African liberation. Nothing in Ruto's speech said anything about Niger being liberated from colonization, that he knows they're still under.
Exactly. And that's why we need these leaders like Kimmy Saber. You mentioned last week. We found a 2-part interview that he just did last month that we're going to post. Certainly we need strong young Black leaders like him and Ibrahim Traoré from Burkina Faso, and others that are even younger that we don't even know about, but we know they're there because we see them in the streets of Ouagadougou and Niamey and Bamako. We see them in the streets, so that's why we say African masses will be liberated.
Brothers and sisters, if you like this content, give the video a thumbs up so that it can spread in the YouTube algorithm. And like we always say, subscribe for future content. Until next time, be before Hodier.
Be before Hodier.